Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing some handling upgrades on the Mark 1 Audi TT. We are going to be doing these caster correction rear wishbone bushes, these smaller front wishbone bushes. These are actually the same size that they came from the factory before they did the dulling upgrade to save people's lives, which means that we also need to fit these cookbot inserts to the front to make the diameter smaller. Now I want to apologise about the state of the garage. I had to downsize from 1,000 square foot to just a small home garage. So yeah, I'm still not quite fully sorted. I apologise for that. It is what it is. I've got my press, I've got my bushes. We can't just sling these in any old how. We need to do a bit of measuring, a bit of marking. So before we do that, what we will do is we'll start with these, okay? And yeah, let's just shove them in. Now when you push standard bushes in, you push them through from this side here, which has got this massive chamfered edge. Top side has also got a chamfered edge, but not as much. So what we're supposed to do is push on the wishbone down onto that bush. But as you can see, to keep it central, I lose a bit of clearance, and I've made that mistake before. So I've got to raise this up to be able to do that. If you don't have a press, you can use something like this, a threaded bar setup with plates either side that will pull it through. Now this is what I use to do the rear trailing arm bushes. We will be doing a video about doing that on the track car, but not today. But so you can use something like that as you tighten the thread, it's going to pull things closer. I've just pulled this out so that I can use this to sit nicely against here to be a nice flat edge. So it is absolutely critical that we make sure this is square. So you can see from here that it isn't at the moment. Yeah, that would be bad if we tried to go in like that. So we need to make sure it's perfectly square before we start pressing. So I've got it to the point where it's just touching. You see how I've got that control over just a little bit of wiggling like that. So now I can start applying gradual pressure, and it should be nice and square. Look at that. Apologies for the shaky camera work. All the way to the bottom. And we should now have, there we go, one insert. We've actually got no little shavings. That's nice. But yeah, don't be surprised if you do get the odd little shaving come through out with that insert. So I've even managed to nearly get it. Oh, not that it matters. Yeah, that looks good, doesn't it? That's, the wishbone's going to sit flat like that. I mean, you'll never see that, but yeah, it's nice to do things in line, isn't it? Right, which means that now, because we're fitting a polybush, it's dead simple. This will just sit in there. Dead easy. We need to make sure that we do, well, we could use the super glue grease, or we can use the Perflex grease, and we just want to grease the surfaces of this bush. So in a conventional bush, what's happening is the, where's this bush? Ignore the fact that this one is in pieces and this is massive compared to the front bush, but this piece is bonded to here. So when you bolt this down, this doesn't want to move, and the arm doesn't want to move around this. So the bush twists, and that's what causes them to separate. When we bolt this in, it's this crush tube here that is bolted to the subframe that's sandwiched there. But this bush is free to move around this crush tube here, and that's the whole point of this, so that this will move nice and freely and not bind up. So yeah, get some grease in there. Doesn't need to be a ridiculous amount. And then we can just push this tube in. And with these black series, there's not much give. That's the whole point. Oh dear. I'm probably going to have to use 2 hands just to hold this together as I push it in, but you get the idea. Remember what I was saying about that we wouldn't see the cook butt right in? Well, there you go, that's why. Now, why do we want small, solid bushes at the front here? Well, as you input steering into the vehicle, the pressure gets sent this way through the wishbone, okay, as you're loading up this side. So if you don't have solid here, what's happening with the standard bush is that this is moving ever so slightly, that way or that way, you know, as the whole car's moving. And so that's where you get that numbness of steering input, okay? You lose a little bit of the feel. It's less direct. This takes that, that takes that play out of the steering. Now, it's that directness of steering that was actually blamed on killing a few journalists who were going a little bit too fast and being a little bit too over eager, which is why they numbed it down, made the bushes bigger so there was more deflection and the steering didn't feel as good, but that's what made it safer. Then we get onto these bushes here. Now, they have a line on, which if we have a look on here, this tells us what we need. So we want to put it onto performance settings to increase caster for both of them. So what that means is these will end up sitting like this, but it's critical that we get these. If we go like that and like that, that's going to be wrong. We need this line. So what we have to do is dead tricky, this, but is if we put a piece of threaded bar here, so if we put a piece of threaded bar there, that gives us a straight line this way to easily visualize. And see how then that's quite easy to just pull this back to where it needs to be. And if you wanted to get really careful with that, you could get some sort of right-angled implement. Some would call it a set square or similar. What have I got kicking around? Ooh, I'll tell you what we can use. Here we go. We can use a number plate. So we've got that straight line that we can use. Yeah, cool. And so we can make sure that this lines up nicely. Cool. Keeping it very still. And there. And then what we can do, because we know where we want that to be, which is there, we can put a little mark. Like so. If we do the same this side, then these marks should go perfectly across to each other, but that means I've got to get this fitted first, so bear with me. So here we go. I've got those sat flat there, in line with each other. These are set in line with each other, so in theory that should cut those both perfectly in half. Now, there's lots of ways of marking them. There's probably some really intelligent ways of marking them. I'm just using whatever I've got to hand. You can probably do something a little bit better. Ultimately, if you're within a couple of degrees correct, you're going to be all right. So I'm just going to check this a couple more times, commit to exactly where they need to be, and push them in. Perfect. It's as close as I could have hoped for. Now, you might be wondering why I went with caster correction bushes, and I'm going to try and explain it in the best way that I can. Here, by the bolt now going through further this way, this whole wishbone is twisted that way, which means ultimately the point where the ball joint goes has been pushed forward by, let's say, a few mil. I don't know exactly how much. So if you come to the car now and you look, you've got top of your suspension there, centre line of there. We're basically pushing that centre line forwards, like I say, ever so slightly, which just gives us more caster, and more caster is more good. yeah, it'd be nice if it was fully adjustable, but it isn't, and this is a tried and proven setup. So yeah, anyway, that's the bushes sorted. And what is nice about these bushes is that as this crush tube goes through, unlike these front ones where we're just pivoting that way, at the rear this needs to be able to pivot this way. So that's why you've got this scalloped surface, which means that this can, if we put it under a little bit of pressure, can move like this without putting strain on the bush itself. So that's why that is designed like that. Obviously you can go for a spherical bearing type, which would be great, but then you just have these bits that just go over there like that to stop muck and grime and stuff going inside there, and to also keep this correctly centered with inside the subframe. So yeah, that's the Super Pro caster correction bushes. I should probably get around to fitting those. I'm not going to do it today because, as you can tell, it started raining, but yeah, hopefully that helps you out if you are planning on assembling wishbones with Polybushes. So if that has been useful for you, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because we're also going to go through fitting some Powerflex bushes, Black Series 2, the dog bone mount, both parts of it. We're going to do the steering rack bush as well. I've got some gas coilovers to go on with some poly top mounts. We've got stud and nut conversion to do. There's plenty going to be going on. So make sure you subscribed, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.